Then they post my bank account. I got so much anger in me, got no way to take it out. Think I'm stuck in the matrix. When I fuck's my nitrous. Yes, I am a cook. I like when people fuck on my bitch. The shit that I'm posting on Twitter, they telling me, hey, don't say that. How niggas can't see me in public, I'm driving an all-chrome Maybach.
Welcome everyone to 18-year-old.
With all of the money and fame, I still don't get to see my children. Niggas see my Twitter, but they don't see how I be feeling. So I became a Nazi, yeah, bitch, I'm the villain. Nigga, how Hitler? Nigga, how Hitler? They don't understand the things I say on Twitter.
What could they be writing?
Nigga, how Hitler? They don't understand the things
The
I say on
opponent
Twitter.
is not an easy one that he's facing.
She wanna fuck in Japan. I put the chrome on the Benz. She reaching down in my pants. She got the world in her hands.
Alright, Magnus, what are you doing,
He
nigga?
puts his knight on f6. And now Vincent moves his pawn up to c4. How does Magnus continue here? He goes for e6, a very, very solid opening choice. And Vincent is ready for the Nimzo Indian. He plays knight to c3. And now one idea is to play Nimzo Indian. The other one is to play d5, which is the Queen's Gambit declined. Well, Queen's Gambit declined is a little bit, you can say, more solid in nature than Nimzo. Nimzo is more active. If you get your bishop here, let's see what Magnus chooses. And he goes for d5, striking in the center. And Vincent goes for c takes d5, the exchange variation of the Queen's Gambit decline. It also leads to the Carlsbad structure. This structure with 2 pawns here and 5 pawns in a clump, and also 4 here for black and 3 is known as the Carlsbad structure. Bishop comes to g5 and pins the knight. Now the threat is to take the knight, queen takes, and pick up the pawn on d5. Magnus plays bishop d4, and suddenly from the Queen's Gambit decline territory, we are in the Ragozin territory. So bishop d4 played by Magnus, and now Vincent plays the very solid move e3. White has a very strong center. Magnus has piece activity. He plays h6, and right now White can take the knight. He can move his bishop back, or he can also play his bishop back to f4. Vincent decides to play his bishop back to f4. And now there are again many options.
Long name countries where horrible things are happening every day. Some of them inflicted by nature, some of them inflicted by man, some of them inflicted by impersonal systems or institutions. Let's talk about Israel and Palestine. So, if you don't know what's going on, it's the same thing that's been going on since like 1900, okay? We're going to go all the way back to like the 19th century. Look.
Niggas be cheating, man.
So, thousands of years ago, the Jewish people, fled Egypt and established a homeland in Israel. Their Messiah comes and they reject him because they are worldly and arrogant. They are punished by God through the Romans and expelled across the world. Now, thousands of years later, in the 19th century, after the Jews have been persecuted everywhere they go for no reason at all, just because people are assholes, people are jerks, and they're like, hey, you look different than us, we hate you. So Jewish people are scattered all over the world by the Romans, Because they killed God. God sent his only son, and they crucified him on a wooden cross. So God said, you know what? You're done. I gave you a land. I created you. So, you know what? Wrap it up. So God tells the Romans, these guys got to be scrambled all over the place. They can't have, it's over for them. Their land is no longer theirs. So the Romans take it over, and they scatter the Jewish people across the world. And Jewish people, they come to these other countries, and they're not really getting along with anybody. You know, they're like, maybe, hey, what's that guy doing by that well? Oh, I'm dying of the plague. I mean, they're causing all kinds of problems. Well, no. I mean, they're being treated in a bad way. That's the problem. The problem is they get scattered all over the world, and they're being mistreated. That's what I mean. That's the problem, is they're being mistreated. So they go all over the world, and after thousands of years, they're expelled from places, they're segregated, they're discriminated against, people call them names, lots of bad things happen to them. And so eventually some of them say, you know what, the only way that we're ever going to thrive, the only way that we're ever going to survive anywhere is if we have our own country. We're in all these other countries, and we're at the mercy of Hitler, and we're at the mercy of the Russians and the Pale of Settlement, and we're at the mercy of our host countries, and we're really not having a good time. So why don't we create a country of our own, and then we can push people around? A little foreshadowing there. They say in the 19th century, they say, you know what? What if we had a country, and instead of getting pushed around, we were the ones pushing people around? Foreshadowing. So this is called Zionism. They create this. Their ambition is to create a Jewish state somewhere in the world. They're scattered all over the world. So they're deciding, where should we go and create a new nation? And they had lots of ideas. Some said South America, some said Central Africa, some said, they had a lot of different ideas about where exactly this would be, but ultimately they decided on the eternal home of the Jewish people, which is Palestine, which is Israel. There's one problem, though, which is that Palestine at the time was controlled by the Ottomans, was controlled by the Ottoman Turkish Caliphate, which is Muslim and hostile to Jews. Nevertheless, they set out to settle this Muslim-occupied land of Palestine, 95% Palestinian, okay? Palestinian, Arab, Muslim, 5% Christian. And so starting in the early 20th century, the Jews begin to colonize what is modern-day Israel, and they're moving there, and over the course of some very shrewd geopolitical maneuvering, at the end of World War I, the Ottoman Caliphate is partitioned, a deal is brokered. So we could get into all of that. I don't think it's necessary for the purpose of this, but basically, the Ottoman Empire, what was the word that I used? The Ottoman Empire is basically dismembered, and they slice it all up, and they give it to different people. And the Sykes-Picot Agreement after World War I, so Ottomans lose World War I, French and British are the victors. So the French and the British partition the Middle East between each other with the Sykes-Picot Agreement, and some of the Middle East is given to the French, and some of the Middle East is given to the British. The mandate of Palestine is the British Palestine that they inherit from World War I. After World War II, in 1948, the Jewish people declare independence. There's this World War II memo, which says that the Jewish people have a right to a homeland in Israel, and the Jewish people fight this war of independence. They basically push all the Palestinian Arab Muslims out. At that point, the Jewish population has grown to something like a majority, like half or like a majority. They expel all the Palestinians into neighboring Jordan and Lebanon, to the east across the Jordan River, and to the north into Lebanon, and they establish their own country. And this is really where it starts. I'm oversimplifying a little bit, but this is the problem. You had Muslim Arabs that used to live there. Jewish people settled it. And in 1948, they created a state, and they pushed all these Palestinians out. And they call this the Day of Catastrophe. They push all the Palestinians into Lebanon and Jordan. They displace them violently and aggressively establish their own territory. And ever since 1948, this has been the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, is how do we reconcile a Jewish homeland in the middle of a Muslim region, How do we reconcile and this is one component of the problem, how do we reconcile a newly created Jewish state in the middle of a former Muslim empire? To their north, to their south, and to the east is Muslim. To their south is Egypt and Saudi Arabia. To the east is Jordan and Iraq. To the north is Lebanon and Syria. And it's Muslim countries all the way around. You don't get a country that is not Muslim until you get to, like, Armenia in the north. You don't get a non-Muslim country until you get to, like, India in the east. You don't get a non-Muslim country until you get to, I don't know, like the Congo and to the south in Africa. Something like that, right? So, I mean, they are like totally, and then to the west is the Mediterranean Sea. So they're totally shrouded by Muslims. How do you reconcile a Jewish state in the middle of sort of the ruins of a former Muslim empire, centuries old, millennia old Muslim caliphate? That's problem number one. Problem number two is, how do you reconcile in particular this legacy of 1948, which is to say, Palestinians, to create the Jewish state, people had to be displaced rapidly, right, in a short period of time, and lots of them. Jews settle Palestine in half of a century, and then they expel the remaining Arab Palestinians, for the most part, aggressively in 1948 to establish this country. So it's not just that there's a Jewish state in the Middle East, it's that there is a Jewish state that displaced Arab Muslim Palestinians, which have been living there for thousands of years, and who, within a lifetime, 1948 in the grand scheme of things is recent. How do you reconcile this with the fact that there are people that were displaced within their lifetimes by this state, now living in another country? And how do you reconcile the fact that there are people living under Jewish rule, living under the Jewish-Israeli rule, that are being treated as second-class citizens in a place that their forefathers, that was their forefathers' country? This is the problem. The modern day problem is maybe a little bit deeper than that, which is that what happened in 1948 has been continuing perpetually since then. That the Jewish settlers who started coming in the turn of the last century have ever since been continually expanding and settling Muslim Palestinian areas. Civilian Jewish Israeli settlers are continuing to this day to move into historically Muslim Arab Palestinian neighborhoods and parts of the country, and colonizing the entire mandate of Palestine, the entire region of Israel, including the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. And so the Palestinians continue to be pushed back, continue to be pushed out. This is really the problem. What's happening today is that what's happening today concerns a very specific neighborhood. There's a neighborhood, I think it's called Sheikh Jarrah, or Jarrah Sheikh. There is a neighborhood in East Jerusalem, in the capital of Israel, where 4 Palestinian Muslim families are being evicted by the Jewish state, evicted from their homes. And this is a strategy that Jews have used, is that they, in Israel, will evict the Palestinians using this kind of legal framework, and then they will move into their houses, and then a Palestinian Muslim neighborhood becomes a Jewish neighborhood. So this is the latest such example. It's a very aggressive policy. It's been getting more aggressive. To evict the remaining 4 families from this historically Palestinian Muslim neighborhood in eastern Jerusalem. In response to this, there have been Palestinian protests. In response to the protests, the Israeli police go in, and they go into a mosque, and they go into a particular place, and they shoot protesters with rubber bullets and tear gas and all of that. In response to that, Palestinians in the West Bank or the Gaza Strip will send rockets into Israel, launch, and these are very primitive, these are very rudimentary explosive devices, but they'll float explosives on balloons into Israel, launch, again, primitive rockets into Israel, and attack major cities like Tel Aviv or Jerusalem. In response to that, Israel gets 80 fighter jets and destroys buildings in the Gaza Strip. In response to that, Israel literally assembles armed military soldiers and tanks and puts them on the border and gets 80 fighter jets, scrambles them, and gets them to blow up buildings and bomb people in the Gaza Strip. And then the whole world says, hey, I mean, that's not really proportional. That's not really proportional. Palestinians protest and you shoot them with rubber bullets. Palestinians launch these kind of like rudimentary explosives and then you blow up buildings and you send 80 fighter jets to bomb the shit out of them. It seems like it's a little disproportionate. And then Israel says, well, everyone who says that is being anti-Semitic. Why does everyone hate us? Why are we persecuted? Why is there a double standard? You just hate Jews, don't you? And then everyone's like, no. But what you're doing is really messed up. So I'll read you this article. This is from antiwar.com. Summarizes it a little bit better. It says, with violence against Palestinians escalating in East Jerusalem, the U.S. expressed concerns over the situation and the planned evictions in the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood. According to multiple media reports, the Israelis did not want to hear these concerns and told the U.S. not to meddle in the crisis. The concerns expressed in a Sunday phone call between National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and his Israeli counterpart Mir Ben-Shabbat. According to Hebrew media reports, Ben-Shabbat told Sullivan that the U.S. and other countries should stay out of the conflict. He said international pressure on Israel to halt the evictions or stop the violence would be a prize for the rioters and those sending them who hope to put pressure on Israel. Ben-Shabbat also said Israel was handling the situation out of a position of sovereignty, responsibly, and with common sense despite the provocations. About 40 Palestinians face eviction in Sheikh Jarrah. Palestinian protesters have faced attacks from Israeli security forces and Jewish settlers. Israeli police also stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque and fired rubber bullets and tear gas, injuring 215, including 153 who were hospitalized. Amid the Israeli violence, rockets were fired and incendiary balloons were sent from Gaza, which did little damage. While Sullivan expressed concerns over the Israeli violence, he agreed with Ben-Shabbat that the launching of rockets and balloons from Gaza towards Israel is unacceptable and must be condemned. On Monday, Israel pounded Gaza with airstrikes, killing at least 27 people, including 9 children. That's not funny. It's funny because it's disproportional or disproportionate. The situation could escalate further as the Israeli military deployed reinforcements to the Gaza border. So this is what happens. The Israelis evict Palestinians from their homes. Palestinians
thought it was
protest,
up.
and
Easy.
the Israeli security comes in and blows them away with,
thought it was up a few
with rubber
pieces. He
bullets,
was good.
hospitalizes
Didn't even see it
150
coming.
people.
I was plotting
Palestinians
on
in the
this
Gaza
fucking
Strip launched these
lane for
incendiary
so long,
devices
trying to
into
get this
Israel.
pawn out the way.
It's really not a big deal. And then
Once I got
Israel
that
kills
queen
27
off of
people
7,
with
I was all good.
airstrikes from fighter jets.
Because, like, if I
including
try
9
to
children.
put this queen here,
And then they
like
come-
this,
they
the
call
queen
themselves
kills
now,
my
know,
queen. My work goes
my
up,
opinion on
kills
this first and
the
foremost,
queen.
which I'll say
No,
at the
it's not
outset,
checkmate.
and this is not a cop-out, but it's true. I am America
As soon as I got him on
first,
7,
so
I was like,
honestly,
it's over with, little nigga.
I don't care.
His
about
best move was to go
Jerusalem.
here.
Unless it's Christian.
So now if I
I
go
don't
here, it's
care.
not checkmate.
If it's Jewish,
You can
if
go
it's
like,
Muslim,
you can go like this. or
Frankly,
like
I
this,
don't
or like
care.
this.
We've got
Then
bigger
it's a
things
game.
to worry about in America.
But God didn't know
America is
that.
the country that I live in. It's the country that I am a citizen of. And our country is in peril. So, honestly, I don't care about the Gaza Strip. I don't care about the West Bank. I don't care about Israel.
Easy,
I don't
nigga.
care about settlements. I really don't care. On some level, and this is what I'll get to. There's a humanitarian concern, which I'll get to. But from a geopolitical point of view, as a political operative, when we're talking about the American government, we're talking strictly in terms of national interest, not in terms of morality, not in terms of ought, what people ought do in the world and what in a universal sense would be right or just. When we talk in terms of politics, we're talking in terms of policy, in terms of the actions of the state apparatus. And the state apparatus is not governed by this kind of universal morality. It's governed by sober national interest. My idea of what the government's business should be is protecting the interests of Americans. So my concern is not really what's going on with the Palestinians or the Israelis. It's what's in the best interest of Americans. Some people say, these Palestinians, these poor, poor people. That, to me, doesn't really factor in. And the reason for this, I don't say this to be callous. I don't say this to be insensitive or cruel or inhumane. But there is lots of suffering in the world, which we can do nothing about. There is lots of suffering throughout Africa, China, Russia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Palestine, Israel, the Congo, Sudan, Eritrea, Egypt. We could all day long name countries where horrible things are happening every day. Some of them inflicted by nature, some of them inflicted by man, some of them inflicted by impersonal systems or institutions. There is a lot of suffering in the world happening to people on a massive scale every day that we could do nothing about. And so the business of the American government is not to intervene selectively to try to stop what is really unstoppable human misery, but it is to exert the interest of the American people in the world and in our own country. So I don't say that to be mean. I don't say that to be rude. But America cannot solve the Israel-Palestine conflict. We just can't. And we really have no business solving it either. Ultimately, what do the American people get out of that? Is anybody trying to solve our problems, of which we have many, and we've got our own problems to deal with? Which countries are trying to solve our problems? Russia, China, Rome, Italy, Germany, Saudi. They're not trying to solve our problems. So just like on an airplane, you have to fasten your mask before you help anybody else, we have to take care of ourselves first, primarily, America first. And as far as I'm concerned, there is really no strategic interest in getting involved in this conflict. And actually, the reverse is true. We have, to the exclusion of Palestine, sided with Israel every single time since 1948 and before that in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It has been one-sided. It has been unconditional, the United States support for Israel. And what that has done for America is it's created enemies for us in the Middle East. It has created resentment against us among Muslims. It has served as the impetus for terrorist attacks on our soil. Palestinians have not conducted terrorism on American soil, not major operations. The biggest terrorist attacks on American soil are by Islamist groups, not Palestinian, but Islamist groups that hate America to a large extent because of our unconditional support for Israel against the Palestinians. Not because, Palestinians are sick or something, but because of our unconditional support for their adversary. So what our support for Israel has done is isolated us diplomatically, hurt our interests geopolitically, created resentment against us among billions of people in the world, and it has caused death and destruction on our own soil at the hands of Muslim extremists. That is what our support for Israel has gotten us. What's more, and this is a relevant fact, is that in spite of our unconditional support for Israel, which is only in this conflict, which has only created bad blood and enmity between us and Middle Eastern countries, what's more is that they never return the favor. We have supported them unconditionally in their expansion of settlements and in everything that they do over there. And we, from a rhetorical point of view, tell them, hey, don't do settlements, and we allow it. Not only do we give them unconditional support in that way, but in every other way. Billions of dollars in foreign aid. We fight wars at their behest, and the list goes on. And they repay the favor not with gratitude and not with some kind of mutual reciprocal benefit, but they respond to it by spying on us. They respond to it by selling our military technology to our adversaries. They respond to it by influencing our politics in a bad way. They take people that spy on us, that conduct espionage against us in America, and literally roll out the red carpet for them on a tarmac with the prime minister awaiting them. That happened to Jonathan Pollard this year, or last year, I think. So it's one-sided. It's not reciprocal. We don't get anything out of it. And actually, bad things happen to us because of it. So why do we continue to support Israel then, if that is the case? Why then would we have an unconditional, one-sided support for Israel if we get nothing in return, and actually we suffer because of it? You can't be America first and be in favor of this relationship. You just can't. The reason, and this is a rhetorical question, of course, when I say, why do we do this?
Easy.
The rhetorical
Come on.
question is to illustrate
Feed
there's
me
no
more.
reason we
Feed
should be
me
doing
more.
this if you're an American
That's
citizen,
2 in a row,
if you're an
baby.
American patriot. We all know the reason why we do it, though. If I were to
I wasn't even going
ask,
for the
why
checkmate.
would
He just
America
gave it to
act
me.
against its own
Had
interests?
his night
It's
pin
because America
with my
doesn't
queen.
act. Politicians act.
Tried to move my fucking knight there, bang.
Individuals in institutions act.
He fucked up right there moving that
Individuals
pawn
in
up. That was
institutions
random.
are
I said, give me
captured
that fucking...
by
That was the only
interests.
thing saving that fucking knight right
Individuals
there. So
in the
give me
US
that
government,
fucking
State
knight.
Department, in the
Then it was
Congress,
just like,
in the
oh!
DOD.
Fucking,
so
I'm
that is
covered
your
here.
Secretary of Defense,
Easy.
your Secretary of State, your deputies, your undersecretaries,
Then he
your
moved him. I said,
bureaucrats,
oh!
your politicians,
You wanted me to
your
win. You
individual
wanted me to
politicians.
win.
They are captured by interest groups,
For
lobby
real, baby.
groups.
Easy.
It is no secret that the Israel lobby is one of the biggest, if not the biggest and most influential lobbies in the country. Bigger than Big Pharma, bigger than Big Agriculture, or, you know, maybe just as influential. We could talk about all those lobbies, but largely the Israel lobby goes ignored because everyone's in on it. Every year, 2/3 of Congress attends the AIPAC annual conference, the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee. 2/3 of Congress, Republicans and Democrats, presidents, speakers of the House, Senate majority leaders, senators, congressmen, governors, you name it, they all go. And a lot of them are on the dole to some extent, and if they're not, then opponents are funded by the Israel lobby. So when I say, well, why do we carry this on? It's a rhetorical question for people to say, gee, there really is no good reason. To sincerely ask the question, why does it go on in spite of there being no good reason? It is because America doesn't act. People in institutions in power act. People are corrupted by a lobby to make decisions against the interest of the other people in the country. People in the elite, in the institutions, are paid by people that support Israel to go against the interest of the other people in America. So it's very much in the interest of the policymakers and the decision makers to be in favor of Israel. Why? Because they get paid money. They get paid money, and their influence is protected and elevated. So it's not in the interest of the United States of America or you and I, but it is in the personal, individual interest of policymakers, decision makers, and individuals in the institutions to do this because they derive a personal benefit. That's why we do it. There's no prevailing interest for everyone in the country or for the country as a whole. It's about the people that are in power. They are rewarded with power and money for doing these things. And this is not controversial. You know, this is called anti-Semitic or something. It's not. This is how interest-based politics works. That is why the American government has a pro-big pharma policy. That is why the American government gives subsidies to farms. That is why the American government does lots of things that are not in the interest of the American people, because the people derive a personal benefit and power by supporting policies that benefit their patrons, by the people that pay them lavishly. When you're a politician, bureaucrat, whatever, regulatory firm, it's called regulatory capture. A bureaucracy is created to regulate an industry, and over time, that industry buys out the department, buys out the bureaucracy that regulates itself to give itself advantage, to give itself a benefit. This is politics 101. This is democracy. This is like they teach you this in political science 101. Regulatory capture. They set up the Department of Transportation or Interstate Commerce Commission to regulate the railroads and regulate highways and all of that. And over time, powerful, some of the most wealthy people in the industry pay lots of money to put up politicians that appoint the people that comprise a regulatory agency, regulatory bureaucracy, to create favorable regulations for that business, for that industry. And in the same way, a state actor like Israel, a state actor, will sponsor politicians that will work in the State Department or the Congress and create favorable policy for that given state. Saudi Arabia does it. Qatar does it. The United Arab Emirates does it. China does it. Many countries do it. NATO does it to some extent. Israel just happens to be one of the most pervasive and successful lobbies in that regard. That's why we do it. And that's why you see all these conservatives. It's a pretty good litmus test. That's why you see all these conservatives, including Donald Trump, come out and say, we stand with Israel and their right to self-defense. Why would these people care? Why would these people care about that conflict over there? Some people might say oil. I've heard this a lot. Oil. Middle East equals oil. Israel is in the Middle East. We protect Israel because of oil. Well, that is wrong because Israel is located in the eastern Mediterranean part of the Middle East. The oil from the Middle East comes from the Persian Gulf. Israel does not border the Persian Gulf. Israel is not, relatively speaking, near the Persian Gulf. Israel has no fossil fuel resources to speak of, unless you count the Golan Heights, which is regional. So the oil that, allegedly we are at war for to secure and everything, it comes from Saudi Arabia. It comes from Bahrain. It comes from the United Arab Emirates. It comes from Kuwait and Qatar. It comes from the Persian Gulf and the oil fields on the Arabian Peninsula. It does not come from the Eastern Mediterranean. There is no strategic interest in the Eastern Mediterranean other than Greece. Greece is a strategically important country because Greece is the gateway to the Black Sea. The Black Sea is strategically important because it's situated at the border between Asia and Europe. It is in the center of Eurasia. Greece is the gateway to 3 continents: Europe, Africa, and Asia. So why do we not talk about the conflict between Greece and Turkey? Greece is strategically important. Why do we not talk about Saudi Arabia or Doha, or Dubai as our closest ally? We do. I mean, we're captured by those interests too, but why is that not a special alliance? Saudi Arabia is more strategically important for the United States and Israel. Why do we not talk about Japan, South Korea? Why do we not talk about Gibraltar? Why do we not talk about the Panama Canal? These are all more strategically important than Israel, than the Eastern Med. So it has nothing to do with strategic import. There's nothing to benefit from that. The fixation on this country from prominent Republicans, politicians, comes from the fact that quite frankly, that's who's putting up lots of the money. Sheldon Adelson was the single biggest donor in American politics for like 4 cycles. He put up $100 million. Sheldon Adelson put up $100 million in 2016. He put up close to $100 million in 2018. And he put up a lot of money for the 2020 election as well. I don't know the exact figure. So he became as an individual, one of the Singas Biggle. I've done it again. I was like, don't fucking say it. Don't say it, because I've done that before. Don't say Singas Biggle. I almost got my
queen killed just
Damn
now.
It!
Holy shit.
But he's been the single biggest donor for like 3 or 4 cycles in a row. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. This guy's a multi-billionaire, and he's directly connected to the Israeli state, directly connected to Netanyahu. And who do you think he donates to? Trump campaign, Republican Party. So why does Trump write out a press release about some situation that's going on in Israel that has nothing to do with us in a region of the world which is not strategically important? And something that we really don't even have like a real clear interest to intervene? Because the Trump campaign was funded by people that are Zionists. That's why. Because otherwise we should not care. Why would Trump not write a press release about the Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar? Why would he not write an article about Nagorno-Karabakh between Armenia and Azerbaijan? Why would he not write an article, about the Donbass, about Luhansk and Donetsk in eastern Ukraine? Why would he not talk about, literally any other...
Got him, fellas.
Any other regional flashpoint between... state actor and a regional sort of breakaway territory. It's so obvious, but you're not allowed to talk about it. It's so obvious, but you just can't say it. Why does everyone give a shit about Israel? It's like Ilhan Omar said, it's all about the Benjamins. She was right. And they said, oh, that's an anti-Semitic trope. Really? To say that money controls politics is an anti-Semitic trope? If I say that agriculture gets subsidies because of money in politics, that's anti-Semitic? Are you retarded? Of course it's not specific. But Jewish people happen to be very good at it. And that's why we live in the situation that we do. And that's why all these conservatives are out there saying, Israel's based, and I support Israel. And they're making all these arguments. Why even care? I didn't talk about it yesterday because I was like, I literally don't care about Israel or Palestine. And even liberals, and it's fascinating, leftists come at it because they view Palestine as, that's an expression to them of anti-colonialism. That is the last breath of anti-colonialism, right? So leftists are uninterested in the national interest of America. They are pro-Palestine because they think that the Palestinian struggle is an anti-colonial struggle. They view the Jews as an extension of whites, as an extension of Judeo-Christian civilization, and therefore as a colonial oppressor of the global South, right? Of the Muslim Arabs, the third world. So they're wrong too. I mean, I don't care about Palestinians. I care about America. America has no interest here, but yet America intercedes to our detriment on behalf of Israel because of money and politics. I mean, that's the angle. Now, all of that being said, I'm basically ambivalent about the situation. On the one hand, if I were Israel, it would make sense. If I were Israel, I would say, you know what? We're in a hostile territory. We're in a hostile neighborhood. We've got Muslims in the West Bank and Gaza Strip, which don't like us. They're never going to like us because we had to take from you to create our own nation, and it's a zero-sum game. For Israel to exist, Palestine had to be displaced. So that resentment will always be there. And as long as those people are within the borders of Israel, they're going to pose a threat to Israel. They're this resentful, angry minority where there's really, I don't think, a political solution to integrate them.
Damn.
So, I mean, I think it's in Israel's best interest to basically
two checkmates in a row, also checkmate. I'll take it.
And if the Palestinians
Should've
object,
won.